I'm Francesca Donnellan. Welcome to Becoming More Human, the podcast. Every generation, through its arts and creativity, explores the same questions. Who am I, and what really matters? We are so often taught how to emulate others, to make other people happy. But how do we access what's good for ourselves and be strong enough to actually claim it? It's a constant practice because we all keep evolving. There are no limits to personal growth. You can start your journey today and get closer to discovering your true self. Give back to the people around you and make the world a better place.
Hello listeners, this special episode is from a live event we did at Soho House powered by Porsche. I'm in conversation with Allegra Haines, an entrepreneur and trans rights advocate, on the evolution of becoming her true authentic self. This inspiring talk will help you learn about what it means to be a transgender woman and provide space for personal thought about the vision we hold for ourselves today and for the future. I am inviting you throughout this episode to give perspective on the power of claiming your identity and letting go of what you think defines you, but might not be serving you. My goal is to help people discover they are not what they think they are, but get closer to who they really are. What helps humans on this journey to becoming is usually a big life-changing moment. Maybe you've experienced one where in a moment everything changed and suddenly life through your lens no longer looked like it did yesterday. I invite you to observe yourself without judgment of who you think you are or who you are trying to be. The question we need to ask ourselves is, who am I? And what we put after I am is something to be mindful of, because it reflects our identity and the social constructs we have created. My question to you all is, who am I beyond all of these external identities? Who is the one that sits in the seat of your soul? You are not your emotions, you are not your thoughts, and you are not your job. So who are you? There are unconscious expectations about who we are supposed to be, but who are you? I believe, despite our external differences, the very being of who we are at the seat of our soul binds us. And if we could shed judgment and expectations of what we think life should be, then we all meet in this human experience we call life as equals. I hope this talk with Allegra helps you expand your identity beyond anything you have previously limited yourself to before. I want to welcome Allegra back onto the podcast. This is the second time we've had the pleasure of interviewing her. So enough from me and let's jump straight in. Hello, Allegra.
Hi.
Welcome.
Is that working? It's on.
So, Allegra, let's start by saying and asking, who are you? Who is Allegra Haines?
I'm getting older, so I'm actually going to keep my phone there. I'm not going to read off it completely, but it's just there's a bit of a prompt. My memory's not what it was. So, for many years, like Fran said, I think I always used to validate myself by thinking I am my job, I am where I live, I am what I wear, I am what I own. But after many, many, many years of therapy and therefore self-reflection, I realized that actually who I am is what's in my soul. My identity is what's on the inside. I was born male. I'm not today. The exterior of me has changed. I remember when I told my dad that I wanted to transition, the first point that I made to him was, don't worry, because my ID, the person inside of me, my soul, my heart, my lungs, everything will not change. That will stay the same. And it's something that I didn't think at the time he listened to, but actually I was with him a couple of weekends ago, and it's the thing that he often brings up. It's the thing that he was like, well, okay, I'm going to struggle with the transition.
Yeah.
But you assuring me that your ID will stay the same is what's going to get me through this.
Well, the first time I met Allegra was, maybe nearly 10 years ago now, when I had just started my business and Allegra was just starting her journey. And that is exactly the thing that I will always remember, is how Allegra made me feel when I first met her. and it was mega. She is a force to be reckoned with, and somebody who I knew I wanted to be around. And I never looked at it from a gender perspective. Now, I know lots of other people don't look at it that way. We'll come on to that later. But for me, that is the person I met, was the soul of who you were. But that journey for you started a long time ago. So how did your journey begin?
Oh, God. Yeah, a very long time ago. It was so long ago that it was kind of before the time of... It's weird to say acceptance now because of everything that's going on in the media, but we'll come back to that. But it was way before the times of programs like Euphoria. It was before the times where the word queer was acceptable again in society. I am from as Fran knows, I'm from a very small village in South Wales, which actually, looking back, kind of helped me. Right. I think a lot of people think, oh, you know, transitioning in like outside of London must have been really difficult. But actually, because of the sense of community, because everyone was so scared of my dad, they were okay with me. And I've also got 3 rather testosterone-filled rugby-playing brothers, so that was also
you're one
quite
of 4,
helpful.
aren't you?
One of 4, the youngest. So I think like it's the age-old thing that you read where, you know, I never fully felt comfortable in my skin. I didn't know what it was. There wasn't any real points of reference. So I'm 41 now. So back then when I was 9, 10, 11 years old, there wasn't the points of reference like we have today.
Yeah.
There wasn't the social media we have today. There wasn't the visibility that we have today. There was absolutely nothing. The only person... and this is not discrediting her in any way, shape or form, the only person through the media lens that was put on a platform to mock was Lauren Harries, who is Welsh. She is trans female. She's famous for when she was younger, when she presented as male, she was on the Antiques Roadshow as an antiques expert, this kind of 9-year-old genius. And then she transitioned through the media spotlight back when things were very uneducated, narrow-minded. We're kind of going full circle with the media at the moment. Yeah. So I had no point of reference. So I actually just came out as gay. I thought, I'm really effeminate. I must be gay.
Right.
That's who I am. I am gay. I ignored kind of like my inner ID, as it were.
Yeah.
I didn't know back then. I was gay for about 2 years before I realised, no, this doesn't work for me. I don't know what else does. And then I watched a TV show and it was like, tick, tick, tick. Oh, Jesus Christ. I think I'm not gay. I think I'm actually a woman.
First of all, we can learn so much about watching TV and films and finding ourselves in the characters that are portrayed. And quite often, that's when these ha-ha moments happen, rather than necessarily being forced into a room or being forced to come out to your parents or do those big moments. But for you to have that realization from watching a TV program, how did that make you feel in that moment? Did it make you feel elated, like a weight's been lifted, that you found yourself in that person, or did you feel confused or fearful of that?
I wanted to jump out the window. Like I honestly, the fear that went through my body. I suffer from, like all of us in the room. Fear is it's the least spoken about emotion, I think.
Yeah.
Fear because there's words like stress, there's words that anxiety, which the Kardashians have made like the most popular word, the most overused word. It's, you know, the best thing my therapist, who's called Eugene, by the way. So if I mention Eugene in this talk, he's my therapist. He's not my brother,
great.
Not my boyfriend.
I'm glad we have a name for him.
Yeah, Eugene. I want to like give him a name. He deserves. That's part of his ID. But you know, my therapist said to me, it's like, stop saying you're anxious. Say that you have anxious thoughts, and that's my best advice for anyone, because we can label ourselves as this type of person, like, oh, I'm such a drama queen. No, you just have dramatic moments in your life. We all do. You don't need to do a generic placement on top. But no, I felt fear, and fear is something I suffer with to this day. And I think that fear I suffer today is part of the trauma of realizing that I actually was born in the wrong body. So again, you know, there's an amazing documentary on Netflix called Disclosure. If no one's seen it, watch it, because it is spine-tinglingly amazing.
And what jumps out at you for this documentary?
What jumps out is how the media, how film, how Hollywood have, even way back to the first motion picture, have villainized black men, black women, trans men, trans women.
Yeah.
And how they have been villainized, humiliated, made to look like the clowns, made to look disgusting. There's a famous scene of Jim Carrey in The Mask when I've not seen it, but I remember seeing the clip. I think in the film, he kissed a woman who was a trans woman, and he runs to the toilet and throws up. And that was part of the comedy of the film. And this is when you watch it, you'll see all these films and you're like, you feel guilty.
Yeah.
Even I felt guilty for laughing at those moments, thinking, no, hang on a minute.
We're just so uneducated back then.
Yeah. And that
now,
continues
maybe.
Today, unfortunately. But yeah, so fear is something that ran through me, and I kept it bottled up. I didn't tell anyone until it got so bad that my mum had to get involved with my mental health. Just hit a place that I would never wish anyone to go to. And talking about it, telling people, telling my mum was amazing. Me and my dad have not had an easy time of it. Parents, the majority of the time, only want the best and easiest life for their children.
Yeah.
And I can look back now and bravely say that I now understand where my dad was coming from when he called me a freak, when he said I was making him ill, when he said that he fears for my future. It comes from a point of the fitting in.
Yeah.
Nowadays, when a parent has a child and they don't fit in, it's kind of applauded. I think in London we're very lucky, because I think quite a lot of schools in London, some schools are accepting of it, some aren't. But I think that when I was younger, fitting in was you either fit in or you have a challenging life. And I think that's what parents fear, is that you do not have an easy life.
Well, we have this unwritten code in society that we are all expected to behave a certain way. The gender conversation hadn't really been discussed until recently, but the female conversation, whether or not you grow up, you hit a certain age, you get married at a certain age, you have children at a certain age, there are just things that are unwritten in society that are expected of us. And I don't believe we've moved too far away from that. Now, as society's progressed, we've added certain things in, gay rights, LGBTQ+, we are adding everything in, and we are learning more about humans and becoming more open-minded and really expanding our minds to realize that none of these so-called society proof points really matter. But unfortunately, they do for so many other people, because you get judged on all those points. You get judged if you're a woman, if you haven't done certain things by a certain age. And I think, understandably, your parents back then, your dad, had a concern for you going into the world that he knew then. And the world is very different now, to a point. We know there are certain things going on in the world. Did you, coming into being a woman, did you have a vision for the woman you wanted to be? And do you feel that you've reached that at this point?
Yes. I knew that I wanted to have a voice. I think when I was young, again, this is part of like the whole ID thing. I think when you're young, and we were talking about this earlier on, when you get to about the age of 8, you are your true self. I was super shy. I used to cling on to my mum's apron strings. I actually still do, because me and her are so close.
Yeah.
I didn't really love going out playing with other like kids. I loved being at home. We had a beautiful garden. I remember like lying on the rugs and playing with like toys and just being a bit of a loner, but not the kind of loner that you'd feel sympathy for.
Yeah.
I was just very content. And I think then when you get to kind of the age of 9, 10, you start going to bigger schools and social armory comes up and you've got to be a certain way. You've got to kind of look a certain way. And my school was awful for that.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, God, it was, you had to have things, you almost like a kind of acorn, these kind of shields, societal shields start building around you to protect you.
And you have to wear the certain clothes. You have to have the hair a certain way, and otherwise you don't fit in.
Yeah, you have to be, boys need to be boys, and girls are girls. And even then, I was like, I didn't even have the trans thought in my head then. Thank God, because I think that would have confused me even more. But I think that armory does build up to protect you. And it unfortunately, it can stay up for someone's life for their entirety. It can be there. I think like for me, I had to like debunk that. I had to rip those layers off.
Yeah.
And that came through a lot of work on myself, because I started to realize as an adult, I was like, I don't think that I'm any of these things. Like I'm quite outspoken, quite loud, I guess. But that is definitely a side of me. I have another side of me where I do love staying at home with my 2 dogs, with my fire lit, not letting anyone in, and just enjoying my own company.
Yeah.
Which
is very rare, I should add. Yeah. Like, it's very rare for somebody to want to do that. In this day and age, we are overstimulated by so much. The word FOMO is thrown around all the time. People want to be out and about. They want to be doing something. And if you don't follow Allegra on Instagram, I urge you to, because it's always very grounding. And that's something I think we've discussed from the very start with you, is how you have really built a life that you're able to come back to this sense of being, and you understand how to find stillness in your life and how to ground yourself when you're going through so much disruption, mentally and physically. That must be quite hard for you to come back to that center, because often we think about trans as so much on the outside, but there is a huge amount, I'd imagine, Allegra, going into this is what's going on in the inside.
I think so, yeah. I think just through movies, through the media, through the entertainment angle that is put on trans people, that the kind of, it's about the external mainly. Of course, trans women and trans men will, if they want to, if that's their path, will do certain things to align their bodies with what's going on inside. Like cis women, if they want to do that to the extreme, that's their choice. But that is not representative of the whole trans community. And a lot of it is put on aesthetic. There are a lot of generalizations made. There are a lot of overstepping the line things made, people's questioning, especially on dating apps. I mean, that is a whole conversation on its own.
Really?
The questions that are thrown at you, you are, to the majority of people, fair game. You are on a stage, you are there to be prodded, you're there to be questioned, you're there to have assumptions and generalizations made about you. You're somebody basically that is accessible to anyone with a certain line of questioning.
Why do you think that is?
And that's why I lock myself away when I need to.
Yeah.
because it's kind of like I'm lucky in the sense that I have boundaries around me. I'm lucky in the sense that I'm strong enough to be able to not be in those situations. On dating apps is, again, a whole other thing. But I also, on dating apps, know red flags.
Yeah.
My intuition's good, so I know that in the first question, if you ask me who do I live with, then you just want to come over and you know what, you know? Second question, what's between your legs? That is not uncommon.
Wow.
It's not uncommon.
And do you find people are trying to get to a point where they want to use that as a platform to abuse, or is it intrigue, and what's driving these conversations from people?
I think if we lived in a society which didn't have such strong roots in religion and such strong roots in what I call abusive parenting, when you're passing down negative aspects about members of minority groups, I do think that's mental abuse, if I'm completely honest with you.
Yeah.
If none of that existed, dating as a trans woman would be easy, but there is a stigma to it. And so yes, it comes from intrigue, but actually intrigue from men who would, if it wasn't for society, want to pursue a relationship. Because in my eyes, and anyone that knows me and anyone that's an ally, being trans is, I think, a really beautiful thing. And it's something I would never change.
No.
Being trans, being third gender in certain countries is celebrated. You have like festivals in towns. I mean, I would quite like that. That would be quite nice.
I think you would like
I
that.
wouldn't like a procession in Walthamstow on Saturday, me being carried down in like a flowery kind of...
with the two dogs.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah,
no, but it's, I mean, but in our society, as much, again, we live in London, so it's like, is it more accepted? Perhaps. Do we live in a bubble? 100%. Does pride make everything look okay? Yes, it does. But the reality is not that.
Yeah.
The reality is the community is, I mean, if you'd had this chat with me 2 years ago, I probably wouldn't be saying this, but the community is being absolutely abused. It's being hammered. I said to the people that know me in my life, there will be a brutal murder in the next 12 months, and there was. That will get worse. Certain states in America are trying to abolish people who are transgender. They are banning drag shows because drag queens are the perpetrators of child abuse, of crime, of rape, of murder, of all of these things. And the community at the moment is really suffering. I speak from a platform of privilege. I have a house, I have a job, I have friends. I'm a white woman. Like all of these things, I feel privilege. I never thought that media would have such a impact on me. However, and I feel weird saying this, and I'll probably get emotional at some point, that I've done International Women's Day talks before, and I've always been very grateful for doing them. Today is probably the first time I've ever felt like an imposter.
Oh, I like
and that is down to the fact of when you are constantly reading articles about how essentially cis women should look over their shoulder in the gym. Cis women should this. They're dangerous. They're taking away our rights. This is the other. They're rapists. They're murderers. They're this. They're that. They're the other. They are not women. They're men. And we are taking gender recognition away from them. They will be buried as men if they don't have this certificate. It really does get to you. And
it's heartbreaking. It's disgusting what's going on in the world at the moment.
However, back to your original question, what kind of woman did I want to be? Even strong women get upset. I want and I am a woman with a voice and a strong woman I always wanted to be. Somebody that strong to me isn't just, being the loudest in the room, but it's about having a belief in themselves and being able to help, where possible, other people in my situation.
And speaking to other women, and to be an inspiration, I think, as well, Allegra, to like other women. I think you've grappled and you've held on and you've owned your identity so well. And I think so many women still struggle with that, and struggling to find their place, struggling against society's norms, struggling to be themselves, to find out what that means. We're told to go out and follow our passions. What does that mean? How do we all start to own our own identity in this world? And I think you're such a great representation of that for me. Do you feel that now you have come through your journey, do you feel that you are seen? And what does that look like for you to feel seen?
So, yes, I feel within my family, my friendship group, the people that I love, the people I work with, yes, I do. And feeling seen within that group of people is not talking about me being trans every day. It's just...
You being you.
I'm me. I'm Allegra. And it was funny because during my transition within my previous names, I've had more than one.
Well, we've talked about this on the podcast before. Allegra eloquently talks about the chapters of her life, which I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so it was
brilliant.
Joey. And then I was like, is that unisex enough? Because I used to love Dawson's Creek. And I was like, I don't know, because then it's like, do I leave room for... And I weirdly always think of being sat in a bank. I don't know why. Because actually this never happens. Your name doesn't get called in a bank, but I do.
But that's the social construct that we're talking about. It's this idea of what your name represents and where you see yourself using it.
Yeah, and it's like, Joey. And I thought, if I stand up and then the guy next to me says, well, you're not Joey, because that's a boy's name. And, actually, are you a boy? I can't really work it out. Because at one point I did have a beard and long hair, which was like a moment. And then my nickname was always Bambi, and I thought, well, actually, if I just use Bambi, it means that my dad's not going to have a nervous breakdown about a name change, because it's kind of what I'm called anyway. And there's a supermodel in Australia called Bambi, and I thought, that's basically me, but Welsh, not supermodel. And then I kind of thought that, and then I was like, that does, and then that stuck for about 10 years. And then I thought, do you know what, as my business grows and as I do more, I guess like, more dealing with bigger brands and going at, like, I need a name that actually represents who I am today. So Allegra was always going to be a name that I was going to be called if I was biologically born female. So my dad was over the moon. My dad loved it because it sounds like a Bond girl. My mum loves it just because she thinks it sounds really exotic. And it is Italian and it means joy. And after my body affirming surgery, I thought I felt such joy that that's a good name. So that's been there for a few years. Might change it again. But I don't know yet. Why not?
That's okay, because
we can,
and you all can. Everybody listening can. It's life isn't linear. We can decide to open and close the chapters, and that's what's so beautiful about life. You're in full control of it. So if you decide that you're done with that chapter, you can close that book, go and put it on the shelf and open the next one exactly where you need it to be. And it's easy to look at Allegra because she has changed her gender, which is something that isn't done every day in the society that you've all grown up in. And it's an easier example for you to look at, but you all have that power within you, regardless of what Allegra has been through. It's just we get bogged down by the identities that we've created and the walls that we put up around ourselves to often think there is only one way in life and that's the way I have to do something. So it's a wonderful, amazing, exciting new chapter for Allegra. So what does identity look like for you now?
Identity now is, as I've got older, identity, often when we're talking about, again, like with dating, dating experts would say, well, work out what your values are and then match your values with somebody else. And then, you know, that's how it all works. Identity for me, you know, fuck men. Identity for me is, what are my values?
Yeah. My
identity is built around what my values are. And, you know, whatever they might be, kindness. I have recently, we were discussing this before, I have recently put myself on a very strict budget for the first time ever.
This is a good life lesson, I think, for all of us.
And I would love to buy whatever I wanted within reason, and that would give me so much happiness. And, you know, I'd buy something and I'd wear it and love it and then put it in the wardrobe and forget about it. And I actually worked with Eugene. I'm working with Eugene, my therapist, because I thought, if I'm going to a budget, this is going to give me a nervous breakdown and I'm not sure if I can handle it. So Eugene, help me with this. And what's been amazing is he's asked me to kind of keep a bit of a journal about it, which sounds, you know, very kind of therapized and whatever. But what is actually amazing, even in 3 months, I've realized that spending loads of money on things that I didn't necessarily need is not really who I am. It's who I thought I was. And I was spending for other people.
Yeah.
Because that's who they thought I was. They thought I was, oh, you know, on a holiday or wearing whatever. That, what I've learned, again, in growing as a person, even at 41, is actually, that's not part of my ID.
But that is part of all of our ID on the outside. That's what's something that binds us as friendship groups. It binds us in work as we progress. It's what seems to connect us. It's for you to have that light bulb moment. That's the game changer in becoming. That's the part we're all trying to get to. And then what happens when, you know, you lose that bit of expensive jewelry that you really thought was the most precious thing in the world and you don't have it anymore because you lost it?
I'm still alive.
Yes,
like nothing
exactly.
actually happened.
It doesn't matter.
That was cursed, I think, anyway.
Yeah, even though it's painful when that piece of jewelry goes missing and you can't find something, we always have to be prepared for it to go in our lives, to not be there.
And it sounds very kind of woo-woo and like, you know, you don't need material things and like, you know, the odd things nice, you know, but like, I actually don't.
It's not about necessarily not needing them or repelling them. It's a matter of understanding that you can let them go. And it's okay that if you want those things, but it's not at the detriment of somebody else or your bank balance or your tax bills or anything else that's coming at you. So, Allegra, what is it like sitting here on International Women's Day when there are multiple events going around the world and in London all about being a woman, and your journey to becoming a woman is something so special and unique? And how does that feel for you and the journey that you've been on so far?
Kind of touching what I said before, it feels for the first time ever a little bit impostery, which is really depressing to say. And I am a very naturally positive person, and any time that I do a talk anywhere, my kind of like motto is not to aggress but to educate people. So I would rather just be honest and be like, you know, rather than say, oh, it's great, you know, I feel like one of you girls. Like,
yeah,
at the moment I'm in a bit of a I'm having a bit of a moment because government and media, basically obviously the same thing to a degree, are throwing a narrative out there that is deeply affecting me and my counterparts. You know, wherever they're from, whatever they do, wherever they are in the UK mainly at the moment, in America, I'm having a moment. However, I appreciate being here and I'm proud. You know, like what's the alternative?
Yeah.
And you know, as the old adage goes, like trans women are women. And
exactly.
However people want to dissect that, however people want to use women's rights as an excuse for aggressive, despicable transphobia, that's up to them. But that's what it is. You can pepper it in any way you want. I'm happy and proud to say that the people that do that are ignorant, disgusting, transphobic, bad examples for their children, and they exist within us. Often it's keyboard warriors.
Yes.
Like a lot of the time.
Yes.
But I mean, just pop on Mumsnet for an hour and have a little look on there at the abuse that is put out there to girls that I know who choose to have a public platform. I mean, they're the brave ones. The amount of stuff that's thrown at them, and they choose to be in that position, is incredible.
How do you sort of look at your identity now from the outside in or the inside out? Because I know that from knowing you for a number of years, the outside identity has changed slightly, but the inside, for me, as an outside looking in, has really grown. As I said earlier, you've sort of really grown in this grounding. So how have you married the two, and what work have you done on yourself, both internally and externally, to help marry that?
God, it's so hard to answer. I think like my inside, my soul and my core has always been that 8-year-old. And my external has been almost like prodding that 8-year-old, saying, change with me, become this kind of, become different. Like, it's almost like the outside's trying to tempt the like devil and angel. So the outside's the devil, like changing and toughen to society, trying to get the inside angelic soul, not like always super angelic, but like mainly to change with it. But I think with help from family, my kind of relentless ambition to be happy. It's kind of like a hobby of mine to be happy. However I do that,
I love that.
Whether it's a dog walk, whether it's a bath. I get loads of messages from people going, please teach me how to do self-care.
Really?
I'm like, well, one, I haven't got kids, so it makes life a lot easier to do self-care. But like, I think it's this pursuit of happiness that I will never, dipping below happy, or anyone that makes me dip below happy, I view in such a they're so selfish.
People are taking that energy from you.
People make choices in life and they're often wrong. I've made the wrong choices, I'm sure. So while the outside of me has changed, and like when we're teenagers, like eyelashes out to here, hair down to my bum, big boobs, smaller boobs, like I've been there, I've done it, because I was trying to discover what kind of woman I am. And now at 41, this is who I am. And my inside has thought, thank F for that. I have weathered a storm, and I think she feels calm now with who she is. So now, as my inner ID, my core can now just relax and work side by side with the exterior.
I love that analogy. I think as well, we're all grappling with identity at some phase, and especially, as we mentioned at the beginning, being a woman, deciding if we want a family, deciding if we're going to get married, deciding if we're going to be single, deciding if we're going to keep a job, start our own business. It's only a few years ago, especially when I was growing up, it was all about, women have this opportunity to go out and work and earn it and do the job thing, Then you realize if you want children, that is very hard to balance, how you're meant to do both or to do it all. And everything comes at a bit of a cost. What advice do you have for anybody in the workplace who's grappling with identity, who's not sure about how to find their authentic self or how to work with others in the workplace on identity?
I think there's kind of almost a degree of responsibility from the top. I think that even just having, rather than going to pub with all your workmates and getting shit-faced, have kind of communicative lunches where you kind of like, as much as you can, because some people are quite private, get to know them. What makes them as individuals happy? Beyond the pub, beyond all of that kind of stuff. What is it in their life that makes them happy? How can you kind of like get on their level and encourage that? And I don't know. I mean, I think there's lots of ways that bosses could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to have more of a conversation in the workplace and remember that we are humans, beings.
Yeah, treat people like humans.
But this is it, isn't it? It's so simple, yet we overcomplicate it, because often we go into conversations with our own preconceived ideas and our own judgment on other people, which I know, you have felt a lot during your career, and the perception of who people think you are versus who you really are. In terms of how you have sort of now progressed and you're at a point of your career where you're doing really well, do you have advice to that younger self, to the person who comes after you, who may be going through something similar, and especially during this time when we're hit with such negativity in the press and everything that's going on in America and the UK right now? Any words of wisdom?
Many, always.
I know, I thought always, they would be.
Always got words of wisdom. I think that one thing I always say is I always say, but always get wrong. Don't let who you are define what you do. That makes sense. I did a law degree. The reason I'm not a lawyer today was because during university is when I first realised that actually I was in the wrong body. And then I thought, well, there's no way I could stand in a courtroom presenting as a woman, because I would be laughed out of court, essentially. But now, as a stronger human being, double the age, double the wisdom, you have to stand strong in who you are. I feel, again, very privileged in saying that, because I understand that everyone has different issues going on in their life that may not allow them to be like that. But I do think the one thing that I've done that I would advise somebody is stay true to who you are. As cliche as that sounds, don't listen to the armor that's going up around you. Stay true to you. Don't change due to your job. Don't become an arsehole just because you work in a certain industry. You don't need to be that person. We don't live in the 80s anymore, where it's kind of like power hungry bitches everywhere that ruin each other to get to where they want to get to. You just don't need to be like that. And if you're not like that naturally, you'll burn out and you just won't be liked. And more importantly, you won't be happy. And happiness is literally all that matters. It is all that matters. And I am so obsessed with happiness that I will go through situations making decisions very, very easily, because I go, is that going to make me happy? No, then I'm not doing it.
That's such a great barometer to have. And I think that's something that everybody can actually put into practice into their own life, is finding what that barometer is for you, that you can sort of become the non-negotiable for. So on becoming more human, we always have a final concluding question, which is, what does becoming more human mean to you?
That's the hardest question.
I know. We save it till last because it's a biggie.
Becoming more human is knowing your characteristics, knowing the things ingrained in you that make you who you are. So again, I keep talking about these social shells that go around you. Look back to when you're younger. That 8-year-old person, whatever you might have been doing, look back, ask your family, what was I like back then? Because not everyone's got amazing memory and you might not remember.
Yeah.
But that really is the truest human you will be. And I remember when I first started with Eugene, the therapist, I used to be like, when I look back at my childhood, I had a lovely childhood, but I look back and I feel so sorry for that child And I would like cry in therapy. I feel so sorry. I feel like I'm watching a film, and I feel like my younger self is like that character that no one's talking to. And, you know, he is on his own in the corner with no friends. But through developing and understanding, the person I should have been crying about is the person that was sat in the therapist's chair that day.
Yeah.
The person I look back on as the 8-year-old now, I love.
Yeah.
I want to be that 8-year-old. I want to have that quiet confidence and quiet love for myself.
Unaffected love for yourself.
Exactly. So becoming more human, become the 8-year-old you.
I love that. And I think we can all sit and do the work on that. I know Allegra's spoken a little bit about her therapist, but actually...
A little bit. I've not shut up about it.
She's taking commissions. She gets 10%. But you don't have to do the work via a therapist. It doesn't cost money to go and do the work. You can go and do the work by reading, by listening to podcasts, by sitting with a pen and paper and answering some of the questions I think Allegra has sort of asked you today, and going back to that 8-year-old self to find out who you really are at your core. I know I wouldn't have started my podcast if I hadn't looked back at who I was, because I had moments of growing my own business and looking at what I was actually doing rather than just going along with what I was doing and thinking, what do I want in my next 10 years, my next 20 years? Where do I want to be? And I look back at things I've achieved when I was sort of 15, 16, 17, and I think I just discredited that so quickly and moved on to the next thing, because life is all about how fast you can go, not how slow you go. And that for me, I just couldn't get my head around how you're meant to progress in life and slow down at the same time.
But I think like a really good tip for everyone in the room, which Eugene gave me, and it really works, is in those moments of speed, in those moments of, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and oh my God, those moments of like, when you're waiting for that email to come in and your blood's gone cold. And a really good tip is to take yourself off to a toilet cubicle, wherever you can go, where you can just be on your own and sit and just think in your head. What I say is, I have a heart, I have a soul, I have lungs. I am a human being. Because we can get caught up in this machine mentality.
We get caught up in the doing rather than the being.
And it's fight or flight becomes our first instinct.
Yeah.
But to do that, it's kind of like a meditation, but it takes 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And it honestly, just reminding yourself that you are this being, that you've got a heartbeat, put your hand on your heart and do it. Because we can just get carried away and our anxiety goes through the roof.
Absolutely. And I think that's a perfect place for us to draw this conversation to a close. We are so lucky to have Allegra on the podcast with us. We love having you on. I mean, we've done a podcast recording before together, which goes into a lot more detail about the journey where she originally started from. But it's a pleasure to be able to talk about your journey today and what it is to be a woman on International Women's Day. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thanks for coming. Thank you.
I'm Francesca Donnellan, and you've been listening to Becoming More Human, the podcast. You can follow Becoming More Human on Instagram, subscribe, rate and review the podcast on your podcast apps such as Spotify, Apple, Amazon and Google. And don't forget to check out our website for exclusive audio content on becomingmorehuman.co.uk. Join me next week for another inspiring conversation. Thank you for listening.